Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. To those who gave birth to their first child this year, we celebrate with you. To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones, day and night wearing the badge of food stains, we appreciate you. To those who experienced loss through miscarriage, failed adoptions, or running away, we mourn with you, and I am you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes and prods, tears and disappointment, we walk with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make this harder than it is. To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationship with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment, heartache, and distance with your children, we sit with you. To those who have lost their mothers already, we grieve with you. To those who experience abandonment or abuse at the hand of your mother, we grieve with you and we acknowledge the experience. To those who have lived through driving tests, medical tests, and the overall testing of motherhood, we are better for having you in our midst. To those who have aborted children, we love you. We remember them. I remember you this day. To those who are single and long to be married or to mother your own children, we mourn that has not turned out the way that you thought it would and that you longed for. To the step parent, we walk in those complex paths. To those who envision lavishing love on grandchildren, yet that dream has not come true, we grieve with you. To those who have an empty nest, maybe even emptier in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you a little bit. To those who place children up for adoption, we commend you for your selflessness and remember how you told that child that you love them in that way. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expecting and surprising, we anticipate with you. This Mother's Day, we walk with you. Mothering is not for the faint of heart, and we really have real warriors in this place. We remember you, we see you, we appreciate you, we love you. Thank you. We've been walking through the 5 love languages, and maybe it's a good day you find out what your mom's love language is today. But it's been based on the book by Dr. Gary Thomas. To briefly summarize what we've kind of went through, we've talked about quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, and today is acts of service. Quality time is to be known. Physical touch is to be seen. Words of affirmation is to be heard. Gifts are to be thought of. And today we finish this series with acts of service. And with acts of service, love is not so much as felt as with abstract words or hugs or tangible things or intentional time spent, as it is with a visible action and follow through. Service is to be shown that you love this person. To love an acts of service person is to love with our actions, actively participating in showing our love through serving them. Now, this is more than just bringing them breakfast in bed or make sure you serve them that dinner plate at dinner time at the table. Acts of service is doing things for the person that you know that they would like you to do, or they just simply don't like doing, like dishes or laundry. Do that. But you please them by serving, expressing your love and doing things for them. In our family, we have what I like to differentiate between chores and responsibilities with our kids. Chores are the ones that help the household as a whole, but responsibilities are something that is for you and for your environment, that is simply part of your gift to, or your response, part of the gift that you get to exist under my roof. You have responsibilities in my house to live here. I feed you, you have to clean your room, right? You don't need to be reminded to care for the responsibilities that you have. You don't get an allowance. You don't get props. You don't get a break from those responsibilities. Responsibilities are things like cleaning your room, doing your homework, bringing your laundry basket, or putting your laundry in the basket first, right? That's sometimes a chore or a task, but it's a responsibility in our household. Bringing your basket of laundry to the laundry room, or if you're old enough, washing, drying, and folding the laundry and putting it away are parts of responsibility. Now, I'm the mom and I get to make the rules, right? So that doesn't always apply to me. I don't always wash, dry, and put away my clothes every week, but it's a responsibility in our house no less. Chores are things like dishes, cleaning the bathroom, vacuuming, sweeping. Now, I know we all know as adults that there is a time that these kind of intersect. They kind of cross over, don't they? At some point, the chore of doing dishes as a kid becomes a responsibility in your home, and when you're the only one at home, right, as an adult. That's why I had kids, right? I don't want to do chores. I had kids to do the chores for me. Seems reasonable, right? I'm explaining all this because loving through acts of service is something that we have to differentiate between responsibility and chore. What we do to actively participate in our love for the other person through acts of service, and what we do as a natural part of who we are and how we fit in with that relationship are two different things. Hear my heart on this. I'm not saying that loving someone should be or is a chore, but just this image, if you can see it with me, that in some ways that we receive love doesn't match how we give love. We've talked about it over this series, that if I receive love through words of affirmation, if I tell you that you're doing a good job and I'm proud of you, you may not receive those loving words if your love language is not words of affirmation. For our partner, our friends, how they receive love may not be our same love language. For example, physical touch is my husband's secondary love language at 30%, and it is dead last on mine at 6%. I am not a physical touch person, which is funny because I love hugs. So I don't know what that says. But if I want to show my husband love through physical touch, it can't be a high five, right? It can't be this short, sweet little, hey, love ya kind of a feeling. In order for me to show love, he won't feel that love through a high five or even a side hug or the alike. But at the same time, I'd have to go out of my way, out of my comfort zone to show him that love physically, because that's what he wants, that's what he receives, or how he receives love. But I have to go out of my way to physically show him love because it doesn't naturally come to me. It's not how I receive love, therefore it's naturally not going to be how I speak love in that way. With acts of service, I'm not going to feel loved if he puts his dirty socks in the basket. That's a responsibility. That's something that he should just do. But a chore, an act of love by serving me in that way is an intentional, thought-filled, actively participatory service that is given to the other person because they asked you to do it, they would feel loved if you did it, or they really just don't like to do it, and you want to love them through doing something that they simply don't like to do, or you know that they would enjoy you taking that on. That doesn't mean you have to like doing it, but it is a participation in your pursuit to show love to the other person by serving them. I may not feel loved if he puts his dirty socks in a basket, but I would feel immensely loved if he washed a load and folded the laundry that's sitting on the couch. I may not feel loved if he put his dirty dish from the table to the sink from dinner time, but I would feel great love if he washed the dishes after I would just spend an hour in the kitchen cooking dinner. You see the difference here between a responsibility and a chore? Do you see the imagery that we have in being how we are actively participating in pursuit of loving this other person? With acts of service, love is felt with visible action and follow through. In other words, if you love an acts of service person, actions speak louder than words. To be loved is to be shown in that way. The very life and death of Jesus is a display of self-sacrificial love. The depth of his teaching and humble approach to this world is surrounded with that of serving others. In fact, at one point, sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, James and John, had their mama go to Jesus and try to strike a deal with him to get the special spot at the right and the left hand of Jesus in the kingdom of God. Jesus responds in pointing out the way that greatness isn't through putting in a request, but through humility. He says in Matthew 20, verses 26 to 28, instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. But Jesus didn't just talk the talk. He walked the walk. He doesn't just use words to teach and tell them things and point them of what to do and how they should be. He would show them. He would put his words into action. So before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing all that would be coming into the world, that he would depart the world here shortly, going and returning to the Father, having loved his own to the end of the age, he would take himself during the supper, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and he'd come from God. He would get up from supper and he would take off his tunic and he would put it off to the side and he would gird himself with an apron. And he would go to each of his disciples, taking the towel and girding himself, and then he would pour water into the basin. He began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that he was girded with. And then he came to Simon Peter. And he goes to Simon Peter and he says, "Lord, you don't get to wash my feet." And Jesus answered him, saying, "What do I do? You do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter." And so Peter said to him, "Never shall you wash my feet." Jesus answered, "If I do not wash you, you will have no part with me." So Simon said to him, "Lord, then do not wash my feet, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you." For he knew the one that was betraying him was completely among them. This reason he'd said, "Not all of you are clean." So when he had washed all of their feet, he had taken his garments and reclined at the table again. And he said to them, "Do you not know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. For then the Lord and teacher washed your feet, so you ought now also wash each other's feet." Sorry, it's a little wet. I forgot a towel. For I gave you this example, so now you should do as I have done. Thank you, Eli. Mid-meal, it says during supper, Jesus does this. He gets up and he takes off his garment, which would have been like a tunic, like an overcoat. A shorter garment, kind of like an undershirt, was underneath, and this garment would have been what servants would have worn during that day to serve a meal. He gets up from the table and he physically takes on the role of a servant, physically dresses himself like a servant. Paul would later write to the Philippians that Jesus made himself nothing by taking on this form of a servant. Notice that he doesn't say that Jesus came and served. No, he actually puts on the very nature of what it is to be a servant. He actually changes his clothes. He becomes a servant. There's a difference between choosing to serve and choosing to be a servant. When I choose to serve, that might be a good thing, but at the end of the day, I'm probably choosing something that I want to do. It feeds my spirit. It does something for me. I can still be in charge. I still decide who I serve and to whom I serve and when I will serve. Often I make that choice, if I'm honest, because it's in my favor. It makes me look good. Makes me feel good. But choosing to be a servant is a removal of self for the sake of others. Jesus teaches us this in this moment, not by telling the disciples they should wash each other's feet, but by doing it himself first, becoming the servant first, physically taking on the role of servant and cleansing their dirty, stinky feet. I picked my son because if you don't have teenage boys, let me tell you, they have some stinky feet. And thank the Lord it's not marching or football season, because they would have been worse. He was so kind to rip off his toenails for me on the way in, though, this morning. So thank you, Eli, for thinking of your mama. It seems so unusual for us. Like when we think about foot washing, it seems so unusual. It seems super weird that somebody would just wash each other's feet when you stepped in somebody's home or whatever the situation was. Every time, if you were to come over to my home, every time you stepped into my home, you would wash your feet before you walked in. It's super weird for us today. It isn't a normal thing for us to do or to think about. In fact, if you were to step into my house and I did as Jesus did here and just got up from the table in the middle of dinner and started washing your feet, I think you'd be super weirded out and you probably would never come back to my house. Right? I think you probably would. I know I would if it happened at your home. It'd be super uncomfortable and you'd probably never come back. But in Jesus' time, it was normal to have your feet washed. Normally when you walked in someone's home, not in the middle of dinner, so this was an abnormal thing. But it was normal to have your feet washed when you were walking in someone's home. They normally, if they had a servant, they would wash your feet as you came in. However, for a rabbi, the teacher, to wash his disciples' feet, well, that would have been just strange. Even for them, that would have been really odd for them. This was an extreme act of servanthood. According to the Jewish laws and traditions regarding the relationship between teacher or rabbi and disciples, was that of they had no right to demand or expect for their disciples to wash their feet. It was absolutely unthinkable, though, for the teacher to wash his disciples' feet. Jesus completely gave himself to washing of their feet. He was thorough in his work. He rose in the middle of supper. Then Jesus laid aside his garments, which he had to remind him of what he waited and just what waited him in just a few hours when he would be stripped of his garments to be crucified. Jesus then took a towel and girded himself. Finally, Jesus poured water into a basin. Now think about it. If Jesus wanted to just display the image of a servant, he would have had one of the servants that were there get everything ready, or tell the disciples, hey, go get a basin and some water. He would have had them do all the preparation work, but that's not how it happens here. The basin isn't ready for him to perform this. He would have had all the planning done, but this isn't what happens. But Jesus doesn't want to give just an image of a servant for them to observe. He becomes the servant himself. He could have quickly wiped a damp cloth on their dirty feet and considered the job well done. But that wouldn't give them the image of servanthood, of loving leadership. Jesus gave himself completely to this work. Jesus turns the chore into a responsibility because he is an active participant in love. If there's anything we want to do as we love another person, at least we should want to love that other person in this way. But if there's anything we should want to do as we love this other person, it's that we don't want to just give this image of love, but we want to give of ourselves in love completely. And sometimes the active love that we give, whether it's through quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, giving gifts, or acts of service, whatever it is, sometimes loving the other person isn't how we receive love. It may feel really weird. It may be uncomfortable for us to compliment your partner. It may make you want to run and have to look at the other person across the table in the eye. It may make you really uncomfortable to do those things and have your phone put away and spend quality time with them. It may feel super awkward to change that baby's diaper or to figure out what to get them for Mother's Day or their birthday, what tool to buy your husband or what chocolate to get her for Mother's Day. It may feel super odd for you, even when it's not necessarily how we connect or how we feel loved. It's how they receive it. And we want to be actively participating and pursuing in that way. In fact, when my husband loves me in a way that I know does not match his love language, I know and I feel actually more loved and connected to him because I know it was extra effort that he gave. I know he went out of his comfort zone to love me in that way, which is why, to me, this narrative of Jesus taking on the role of a servant and washing his disciples' feet has such an impact. None of the disciples were interested in washing each other's feet. Just like you and I probably are zero interested in washing each other's feet either, right? Unless I'm wrong. Now, there could be somebody here that has a foot fetish. I don't know. But I would say the vast majority of us, you wouldn't want to naturally wash somebody's feet. You might even avoid feet at all cost, let alone dirty, stinky, really grubby feet that have been walking for miles and miles, and sandals, dirt, not your feet, anything but your feet. I bet you wouldn't want to wash. Before the Maundy Thursday service a few weeks ago, we were having planning meetings and having all of our conversations about the moving parts for the worship service when we were together as a staff, as a team. And we got on the discussion about foot washing that was going to happen that evening. And two different planning meetings that we had, we were talking about this. We got on the subject of how we absolutely would never want to wash somebody's feet. Even our spouse's feet. It's just gross. We don't want to have to do it, especially not in front of other people. And we got on this topic, and it was quite comical in a lot of ways. But we were discussing and saying how we would never want to do this, let alone another adult male who had been traveling all day in sandals on dirt roads. A few ew and ugh and shivers, I think, were said at some point in there as well. But that's the point. Acts of service isn't about you. It's about loving them, showing them your love for them. Jesus didn't have a foot fetish, but he did have a habit of loving us. and showing us, literally, how to love others. Any of them would have gladly washed Jesus' feet, their teacher. But he said, no. You cannot wash my feet unless you wash each other's feet first. So it's time, friends, for us to show Jesus' love by first showing love to each other. We're going to wash each other's feet. No, I'm just joking. We're not going to wash each other's feet. I'm joking. Y'all are like, I am never coming back here again. See, I told you. But we are going to wash each other's hands. And that's why we have these stations here. We're going to do a hand washing. And the rule is that you are washing someone's hands that you do not know, that you stand across from that person, that you do not know who they are. If you want to tell them your name as you step up, that would be fine. Look across from the table and look at that person. Serve one another in a way that isn't just an image of love, not just an image of being a servant, but actively participating in loving Jesus by loving one another. As the ushers come forward, and you can watch the Copelands here wash each other's hands as an illustration, an example. I'm going to invite you to come up like we did last week for communion and ask that you hear the words of Jesus as he gives us a new command just a few verses later, after he gets himself dressed again and reclines back at the table with the disciples. And he tells them a new command. That's where the word mandi comes from. Mandi, mandate, a new command to love one another as I have loved you. So you must now love one another. Come to the table. Sinners and saints alike, stand across from one another and see Jesus. See him washing your feet, actively loving you in a role that is so undeserving of him and so unworthy of you. You wash their hands and they wash yours as an act of love.